Hello everyone and welcome to Quantin Binnah's presentation today. My name is Cassie and I've been working for the past 2 years for Quantin Binnah doing design work, and I have managed the rebranding project, which included the website and the uniforms and our signage and some other projects around Quantin Binnah. It's been very exciting to work with the staff and the community to bring to life their vision for Quantin Binnah. And one of the big things that we've been working on is consistency in branding and delivering our values visually to make sure that the community understands our brand and what Quantin Binnah brings to the table. As part of the staff and community consultations, the team has talked about many issues in the building, and at the time of producing this presentation, there was a potential budget from the council to work on the building, and we wanted to jump ahead of the curve and present a presentation rather than receiving a whole lot of band-aid projects on the building. We thought it would be best to present a project of what we think would work really well at Quantin Binnah, and it's also a project that allows people to have input of what they want in the future. So the community can look at this project and say, oh, I like this, I don't like this, maybe we can go in this direction. So it's just really a springboard for ideas of what Quantin Binnah might look like in the future. Also, having led all our branding workshops, I found personally that it was great to show the staff and the community an end product, and then they could critique that rather than present ideas that can sometimes be difficult to understand unless you're seeing the final vision. And sometimes with design, we can get caught up with colors or personal preferences. And so it's good for people to see an end result and then judge that rather than getting caught up on the idea, because sometimes that stops people in the design process when they don't personally have a design background. So I'm going to take you through the project today. Also, I'd just like to say that my personal background is in architecture, and that's how we were able to produce this presentation for you today. So let's start. So at QB, our vision is to create a sense of connection and nurture a sense of belonging. Our 3 values that we've really honed in on in our vision and branding is nurturing, belonging, and connection. And through our new brand, we've really looked at maintaining consistency, like I've talked about. We want to have congruency between the service deliveries and our values, and we want to have branding that reflects our service and our community. So on the side of the presentation here, you can see some of the elements of our new branding and the new logo. So this is some of our existing building and site issues. This is the existing plan, and I'm going to take you through the existing program at the moment. So this is the children's services. So our building is predominantly children's service at the moment. If I take my mouse over here, this is the foyer, the entry at the moment, and then you can also enter in over here. Now let's have a look at the staff area. So we've got a very small amount of staff areas, and a lot of what you're looking at is office and storage. So we have a very small staff room here. This mixed space includes toilet and storage. So we have approximately 150 staff, and so we really need more staff areas for breaks and for shift work staff as well to come in before and after their shift. And then we have small amounts of community space, and some of those multi-purpose community spaces that you can see here are also used by the children's services. So children's services really takes over a lot of the building. And obviously at Quantin Binnah, we're called Quantin Binnah Community Centre. We really want to deliver a holistic community service, but at the moment the building doesn't allow us to do that. So I'm going to show you all the program together. So one thing as well that we've talked about is accessibility, and then also street frontage. And first I'll just take you through the accessibility. So this area here isn't necessarily closed off. There are 2 automatic closing doors. You have to press the button to get out. I don't want to say it's not safe, but essentially anyone from the community could come and walk in. Obviously we have staff there at all times, but you could have a better designed building that helps maintain the safety in an easier way. Obviously we keep the staff here at Quantin Binnah Community Centre there and watching out for all the children so they are safe, but the building isn't really helping with any of that. Also, to access the health services, you have to walk all the way through the skinny corridor. A lot of the program is blended, which sometimes you might say that's a good thing, but in this case, I would say you've really got the issue of public versus private program, as we say in architecture. The private areas being children's services, and then the public areas being community services. And as much as we want to have the community in the building, we've got to maintain the safety for those private areas for the children. So that is one thing that we want to look at in our new design. So here are some of our issues listed out. In children's services, we have playground issues, there's uneven surfaces, it requires upgrades to current standards. The Churnside Hall toilets smell, they're small and generally not fit for purpose. We have safety issues regarding the multi-purpose space, and like I said, no divide between public and community space. Then in the building, staff and office space, got staff rooms too small. We need more offices, inadequate airflow and ventilation, which was interesting. Considering we did have an inspection and they said there was adequate airflow, but however, I would love to ask them what ventilation they were referring to in that review. There was roof leaking, narrow corridors and access issues. The car park design creates congestion and is unsafe for children and families. We have a lot of children running through, and then the cars do drive quite fast, even though there is 40k signage. There's inadequate exterior signage for community visibility and accessibility. So that's one thing we really wanted to address as well, is how we engage with the wider context of Werribee and Wyndham. After all, we are a community centre. And then lastly, in the community has no frontage. I'm just going to move to the side here. You've got to walk through the community rooms to access some of the community rooms. So some of them, they're not mutually exclusive, and not enough community and multi-use space. So then we move on to some of the Wyndham growth. So I've had a look at some of the stats provided by the council, so you can access these on the council website if you would like to have a look yourself. And I've listed what documents and what pages each of this data is from. So by 2040, Wyndham population is forecast to grow 87%. That's one of my key points I have here. And you can see some of the data regarding the ages around there. West Werribee is projected to grow the most until 2030, and that is where Quantin Binnah is situated, in West Werribee. And also a key point that I wanted to highlight for Quantin Binnah was around 12.6% of Wyndham's population are estimated to have a disability. The reason I wanted to address this for Quantin Binnah is potentially we would love to expand our services into disability services and reaching more of that part of our community. So as we're going forward in the project, I've reviewed many of the council documents. So I've got some of the key ones I've looked at here, and like I said, if you're wanting to have a look at that document yourself, I've listed the quotes that I've pulled and the data I pulled from those documents on the page, what the name of the document is, and the page that that particular piece of data is from. So these are our key documents that we've addressed in our project today. We have the Werribee Growth Area Plan, the activity centres, the Melbourne 2030 plan, which is referred to in a lot of the council documents, and the Plan Melbourne. So Plan Melbourne was a key one that I've looked at in regards to this project today, because it's the idea of creating a 20-minute neighbourhood that you are able to walk to all your key needs within your neighbourhood, such as grocery stores, fitness centres, the shops, disability services, banks, etc. It's also about how we balance traffic flow versus foot traffic, and increasing the feel of community within a space. So one thing that Wyndham City Council is heavily addressed in a lot of their planning documents is that Wyndham is very heavy on car traffic and transport, and they really want to be able to reduce that and increase the feeling of community. And a way you do that is to slow down how people get around, but you have to at the same time create ways that people can do that, create access, and also areas where you feel safe. You're not going to walk along, 100k freeway, for example. You want to walk along like a little shopping centre that people drive at 40k. So it's how you manage that urban planning is what the 20-minute Plan Melbourne scheme addresses, and that's what we've looked at here in our project. So now we're going to look at our 20-minute neighbourhood for Quantin Binnah. So a 20-minute neighbourhood is just under about a 2k walk. So I've done here a 2k radius from Quantin Binnah, and we're going to look at some of the other services that are within our 2k radius. And this is for when I originally presented this presentation, it was to the council, but also this is for Quantin Binnah for our planning goals in the future, what services we might choose based on our 20-minute neighbourhood and what the community needs. So here you can see I put in the term catchment is commonly used to refer to a retail or activity centre planning, but I've used a 2k catchment here to refer to our local area and what's within that area. And Wyndham City Council's listed that in their activity centre strategy. So this is our 2k catchment from Quantin Binnah, and Quantin Binnah is listed here. Sorry, the QB logo is symbolising Quantin Binnah. So this is a community centre within the 2k catchment. We've got one community centre here. We have 4 schools. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 childcare services, a couple of kindergartens, so playgrounds. There's lots of playgrounds in the area, and one right next to Quantin Binnah, which is really great that Wyndham has so many playgrounds. 2 sports centres, 2 active spaces. Now I will say that what I've counted as an active space is something that's deliberately designed for fitness, like an outdoor fitness gym, similar to a park, rather than just green space that people can use as an active space. And then we have cafes. So there's a couple of cafes, but they're basically only at the Werribee Plaza within our catchment. which may or may not be a good thing for Quantin Binnah because we have our lovely cafe. So we're really the only cafe in the middle of our catchment. So it would be great to have more visibility so people can access that. Then we have a couple of churches, only a few aged care places, no youth services, which was a really interesting find within our 2K catchment, and then only 2 disability services. And that's all the services all together. Now we're going to look at the 3K catchment. So the 3K catchment isn't within the 20-minute Plan Melbourne scheme, but it is 20 minutes from Werribee Station approximately to Quantin Binnah by bus. So I wanted to include that as well into our planning. So here you can see we've got a couple more community centres now, schools, childcare, kindergarten, playgrounds, lots of playgrounds, sports centres, active spaces, cafes. So you can see the cafes basically just Werribee Plaza and then down in the main strip of Werribee as well. Churches, aged care, youth services, disability services, and that's everything all together. So here I've just pulled some of key quotes from the Wyndham City Council's Activity Centre strategy. So these small centres should be located where they have good access to passing trade, serve a walk-in local catchment and enjoy exposure to other activity generators such as schools, etc., etc. And this is one of the facts where they referred to cars and said they want to reduce private vehicle trip making, improving public transport and access to employment generating areas. Now that is a key point for our next thing that we're going to look at, which is public transport to Quantin Binnah. So where the T is, that's Werribee train station. So these are our bus routes that you can get to Quantin Binnah. So we do have 3 buses to Quantin Binnah. However, it's approximately 600 metres to 350 metres walk, and at the longest, it's quite a decent walk for someone who may have accessibility issues. So that's just one thing that we at Quantin Binnah might want to keep in mind for the future. And if we were to go ahead with a building project, it would be great to work with PTV to potentially get a bus stop moved closer to Quantin Binnah and hopefully improve access for the community and people who have access issues. So see, these are some of the key points from the analysis finding. There were no youth services within the 20-minute catchments. These are about universities, schools, how much and high schools we have. A key point from the activity centre strategy was commercial and community centres are vital to community wellbeing, and a view exists that these are underprovided at Wyndham at present, which is a really interesting point. And obviously we would love to improve Quantin Binnah so that we can reach more of the community. Another really interesting finding that I didn't include in the catchment, but it was that there's no co-working spaces within either of our catchments, and actually I couldn't find any co-working spaces within Werribee, and I think Wyndham as well. So something that Wyndham addressed a lot in their documents was having more people who live in Wyndham work in Wyndham as well. So as a community centre, we could potentially provide spaces where people could come and work, feel a part of the community, have access to services, and help solve that problem for Wyndham City Council, because approximately, I think at the moment, they said there's like over 60% of people who live in Wyndham don't work in Wyndham and have quite a decent trip to work. So on expanding our goals and looking at this project, our goals are in line with the Wyndham City Council goals, and we want to have a safer, more connected, inclusive community. We want to celebrate the identity of Werribee, Wyndham, through suburban, civic and rural architecture. And we want to have a meeting place which provides opportunity for connection. And you can see down the bottom of this slide, I've pulled out some of the key quotes from the Wyndham documents that refer to these objectives as well. So here we've got the collection of the Wyndham City Council community centres, which are really lovely. And this slide is just to show that we've looked at a lot of the community centres. They have really great services and some of them have beautiful new buildings. Unfortunately, Quantin Binnah is not up to the standards of some of the other buildings in Wyndham, and we would love Quantin Binnah to be. And that's what our project here today is all about. So the brief for our building going forward is engage with the wider urban context of Wyndham. So that means we want more street frontage, we want inviting and noticeable architecture, we want to plan for safe and accessible transport, and we want to engage with the Plan Melbourne practice of a 20-minute city. So that's what I was referring to before about being able to walk 20 minutes to access your key services. And our second point is communicate the values of Werribee and Wyndham through architecture. So we want to focus on a safe, connected and inclusive community. We want to blend rural, suburban and city into one civic architecture. And we want to employ sustainable technologies. And these goals are all in line with the Wyndham City Council and various documents that they're provided, particularly on the blending suburban, rural and city architectures. That was in the urban design framework, really highlighted in that document. And it was referring to, I think, the freeway that goes through Wyndham, but it's really had some great points architecturally and talking about what the language of the architecture is within Wyndham. And we want to incorporate that into Quantin Binnah as well, because I feel like that, I think and believe that that helps create a sense of community and a visual identity for a place. So our last goal in our building brief is to increase building spaces and connect existing spaces. So we want to redesign external play areas. We want to have a new roof. We want to improve disability access, new staff area, and we want to create a flow between the different areas and the different program while being able to have those privacy and safety issues better managed through building design. So to address the context of Wyndham, I have looked at the history of Quantin Binnah. So Quantin Binnah was officially opened in 1992 and began providing services in October. The name of Quantin Binnah is from Canadian Indian origin, meaning full and plenty. So Quantin Binnah was originally a homestead built in 1890 by George Chaffee, and the Chaffee brothers were responsible for the development of irrigation systems in Werribee and Mildura and other parts of the world as well. So that was a key part of local history in Werribee. And the old mansion used to be right on Werribee River, quite close to where Quantin Binnah is now. And then lastly as well, our cafe space and a little addition at kindergarten were built in 2010. So here we're looking at our current street frontage, which is basically nothing. So really you see trees and maybe something in the distance. This sign here says community centre, or it's referring to the park. So there's no signage, there's no street frontage. We're basically not engaging with the community architecturally. This is what I would call like a shy building. It's not talking to anyone. And when you're a community centre, that's a problem. You want to be able to engage with the community. You want them to be able to come inside and go, oh, what's that building? And also, we have such large amounts of car traffic in Wyndham, especially at this corner. We want people to be able to see the building when they're driving past. So here, you're not going to see that. That's just going to be a blur of green trees. So here I've got the building highlighted. There's the sign. So in Wyndham City Council's documents, they've referred to the expansion of purpose-built facilities and the integration of informal physical activities into places and spaces, and also the establishment of welcoming, vibrant and social places and spaces throughout the community. So as you can see, I'm not sure that we're meeting those goals at the moment. So this is our Thames Boulevard street frontage. So once again, not really seeing anything. You're seeing a playground, which could be any playground. I don't know, is that a school? Is that a kindergarten? I don't know. We've got our blue sign here, the Quantin Binnah, which you can't read, standing across the road. This is taken from Google Maps. So once again, very little street frontage. And we're basically covered by trees. Now, I have had questions about the trees regarding this project. Obviously, this project isn't finished or in any way what's absolutely going to happen, but if you're worried about it, the trees can 1000% be saved and placed in other areas or sprinkled around the building. So here you can see the corner, you can see the trees and the garden in more detail. So once again, no street frontage. And also the main access for the building is, you can see down this side, car park. So in the urban design framework plan, the council talks about ensuring high quality design and consistent design standings for buildings. Wouldn't say we're meeting that. And then we also have strong, memorable public realm design, which compensates for weak urban edges, improved functional and visual connections to civic centres. So for people who don't know what an edge is in design, an edge could be anything that indicates an edge. I know that's not a good explanation, but for example, in this image here, we have this sidewalk and then the nature strip and then the road. So this here is technically the edge. That's an edge in design. And an edge could be referring to a bunch of different things. Like you might say this whole strip here is the edge of Quantin Binnah, and it can get larger. This is the edge of the city. So in terms of weak urban edges, that is referring to in Wyndham, we have so much car traffic in Wyndham. So you're basically just seeing roads. You're not really having this sense of arriving at a destination. It's all blending into each other. So that's sort of referring to the idea of weak urban edges, just for your reference. And how do we create stronger urban edges is how we talked about earlier, increasing the feeling of locality and community, having destinations where you can arrive at and leave, and also more walkability within the community, more places that represent a sense of place, a visual identity. So that's a really interesting thing that the council has addressed, and a great thing to incorporate into a community centre's vision. And also, I'll just say one more thing on that, is that it really ties into visibility as well. Having something that's visually identifiable helps increase that sense of community and improves the edges, because in your mind, think the architecture and the urban landscape don't just blend together. It's sort of punctuated by architecture and places. So this is looking from Quantin Binnah to the houses on Thames Boulevard. So here we're looking at context and also the materiality of our surrounding areas. So in the urban design framework, we've got match the form and scale of the design to the speed at which it's experienced. So that's referring to that freeway, but we can take that in a building sense and say that we want to match the form and scale of our surrounding context. We don't want to just dump a big block onto our site. We want to incorporate it into our community and take care that it matches our area while also achieving our goals. So here you can see we're mainly one level and our material is brown brick. So we talked about blending the rural, suburban and city. So now we're going to look at some of the city elements for inspiration and precedent of our project. So here I've just taken another quote from the Activity Centre strategy that Wyndham should offer high quality urban design that is user friendly and generates a sense of community pride. Centres should incorporate public open spaces in which they can accommodate a diverse range of both informal and formal activities, including people watching, eating, reading, and other community events, all of which are essential ingredients to any activity centre. So we're an activity centre at Quantin Binnah Community Centre. It's actually listed as a small local centre in the activity centre strategy. And so now we're going to look at some of the precedents for that type of design in the city. So part of my background, I went to RMIT, so I know RMIT quite well and the city, and they have some really great design strategies regarding these issues. So that's why I've got so much RMIT here, in case you're wondering. So first here, we're looking at these sort of multi-purpose corridor spaces. This one here is outdoors, and we've got all sorts of seating around here and people can travel through, and then also they could sit and eat, they can study, same as this one, this multi-purpose corridor space that has many uses. So in regards to Quantin Binnah, maybe that can become event space, that can become study space. It's multi-purpose, multi-use, and it also generates a sense of community because people gather in those spaces and travel through them. This is also the corridor space as well. I've highlighted this corridor space as something different because it has this double height ceiling, and then you can see on this one it is the single level. So the double height ceiling creates a sense of grandeur, a sense of importance, and then we contrast it against the single height ceiling that creates a sense of comfort, enclosure, and also in terms of the exterior, we're not having the double height on the outside, so it doesn't overwhelm the urban context. If that is making sense, I hope it is. So here we have some of our outdoor community space, our people watching, eating spaces. These are essentially basically hills, which you see here at the State Library, but you know if you've been into the city how much people use them and how something as simple as a hill looking down can create a sense of community, can create spaces for people to be rather than just open concrete space. And same here as Federation Square, these steps serve a multi-purpose. So here you can see it all in colour. And then we're going to look at a couple more in the city. So once again, we have this multi-purpose space and the double height ceiling in contrast with the single height ceiling. Then we have these study spaces. So if you remember when we looked at the analysis that there was no youth services, and also for young adults working, it would be great to have study spaces, shared workspaces where they could come and be a part of the community at our centre. So that's why we've got those there. And then once again, we've got these multi-purpose steps at the State Library and some of the outdoor cafe space at Federation Square, which is precedent for our cafe, what the cafe would look like. So now we're going to look at the rural element of Wyndham. So here's some historic buildings around Wyndham. And I was so excited when I found this water tank at Cockerock, I believe, because one, it's a beautiful piece of architecture, and then two, it ties into Quantin Binnah's history with the Chavey brothers and irrigation within Werribee. So that was a really exciting find. And then we have some of our other buildings, St. Andrew's Church, we've got the cemetery and the Scouts Hall, and you can see some of the historical architectural materiality and style. We've got the bluestone bricks, which were actually mined from Footscray. So Footscray has long history of being a mining and factory area, and that's where all the bluestone comes from in Victoria. So that's why we have so much bluestone architecture in Victoria in comparison to Sydney. If you go to Sydney, it's all sandstone. And here, just a couple of points from the council. We have moving west along the corridor, there should be a feeling of becoming more rural in character. So that's obviously referring to the highway, but it's good to incorporate some of those points that they've talked about in that urban design plan. And in the plan as well, they're referred to celebrating the city's civic, community, and natural identity. So once again, referring to that blend of elements and creating the visual identity for Werribee. So I have also put a couple of architectural precedents from looking at those elements, and also some new ones to incorporate into our project. So first thing, we've got the brown bricks. So if you remember from the suburban urban context, we had the houses that are brown brick, and some people might not be so excited by brown brick, but you can see in these examples here that on really modern architecture, it's really, really beautiful, and you can do some really beautiful work with brick patterning and just the overall form of the building. So I think it's really a beautiful element to tie into the design of the building, and it fits into our urban context in Wyndham. So next we have what I'm calling funnel architecture. So if you remember earlier on, the council referred to welcoming architecture, and we've also talked about street frontage and addressing to the community. I also talked about when we looked at the current state of Quantin Binnah and that street frontage, that the building's very shy. Well, this funnel architecture helps the building talk to the community. It's literally funneling people in, and it's almost like this loud megaphone of a building saying, hello, come talk to me. It also adds a sense of grandeur and a sense of importance, which helps strengthen the identity of Wyndham. We want to say, you're important, you're part of the community. And then the last element we're going to look at here is this metal metal cladding, decorative cladding, which I'm going to tie in some of our elements using that cladding. So in the urban design framework, the council has said a serial image defining visual experience. So we want to create that with our building at Quantin Binnah. So moving on here, we have my proposed project. And before I start on this, like I said, this is all just a building block to start off with. and to start getting the conversation going. But like I said at the very start of the presentation, that it's great to present something that people can see what it might really look like, and then they can go, oh, I like that, I don't like that. Because sometimes when we're just talking in concepts, it's hard to visualize, especially if you don't have that design background. So this is helping giving our community the language and the toolbox to talk about what they want in a building, and sort of design elements that sometimes are harder to communicate if you don't have that background. So let's get started. So here are the proposed community spaces. You see we have separate health services spaces moved forward. We've got new community spaces, multi-purpose spaces, and then we've got our big multi-purpose corridor traveling through here, which we looked at in the city precedents. And I should have said this at the start, but our large extension is coming out the front here, looking onto Thames Boulevard. And there's two reasons, or a couple reasons, that I've done this in this project. Is number one, absolutely, is street frontage. Number one thing, we have no street frontage. We're not talking to the community architecturally, and that's a big issue. Number two is we want to use what we've got in the existing building and then add on to it. And we also want to be able to keep running services while we're adding to our project. And just a little bit of information of how you might do that. Something like this might be produced prefab somewhere else, and then that means the construction on site can be quite a short turnaround time, so you're not disrupting services, and it could be done potentially, if it's planned for, in the summer holidays or something like that. So that is our main reasons for that. So that means that our main entrances are changed. This is the old main entrance here. I've actually closed that off in this project. You can still access from the back here for children's services. So parents could do collection in that area, and that where offices were, that's now opened up to a larger collection space. But we've got paths coming around here, and our main corridor has entrances on the side, here and here, so from the car park and from the street where there might be a closer bus stop. People can walk in that way. The largest entrance is addressing the road, so it's encouraging people to come from that direction and potentially use other modes of transport, such as walking, bike, etc. So then we're going to move on to children's services. So we basically just have our existing children's services space, and then the SAC room has new toilets and is slightly reconfigured into probably more effective space, but also just to work with the new configurations. And then we have staff spaces. So we have quite a few new offices, a much larger staff room to address the amount of staff, and our admin office has been moved up the front so people can easily access information and Quantin Binnah staff. So that is all the spaces together, and some of the spaces I haven't highlighted here are storage and toilets. Also, the issue that I was talking about very early on about public versus private program and safety for children. All the community space you can see is up the front in the new area, and that basically means that this space can be open to the public, open to the community, and then our children's services is now what becomes the back of the building. So issues regarding safety and staffing are much improved just based off the building design. And it also means that we can have community events, programs at the front of in the building at the same time as children's services, whereas we can't really have that at the moment. So that's a great thing as well. As well as for children's services parents, they can come and pick the kids up in this area and be separate from the community spaces. So this is now an overlay of the proposed design, or this initial design, and the old building. So you can see the differences in the program. So this is the old space. You can see very little community program here, mainly children's services, a little bit of staff. And then this is the new program. So a lot more community space, a lot more staff space. And I'll just point out again, this main corridor is multi-purpose space. So that would be that study space, workspace that people can come sit in and be a part of the community centre. Potentially they would be a work at home employee, but they can come into a community space and be a part of the community. This space here where you see this very faint line, this is the cafe as well. So then you have this outdoor cafe space. So it just improves the functionality overall of the building and improves how much the community can use it. So that is that. So now we're going to move on to the site. So I don't want to just address the building. I wanted to address the site overall because there's quite a few site issues that are just important as the building. So let's get started on the site. In the activity centre strategy, we've got here from the council, the design of centres should seek to achieve the optimum balance of convenience and accessibility to all users of the particular centre, including pedestrians, cyclists, buses, trains, taxis, etc. So at the moment, like I said, there's not the closest bus stop. So I've put in, maybe a dream bus stop, if PTV would be so kind, because at the moment it's over here. And for someone with accessibility issues, that's still a massive walk. So to make it a bit closer would be great. So one of the first strategies I've employed for the site is grass mounds, basically hills, not very high, but the thing is that the site isn't enclosed, and also the way the paths are in the existing site, it creates what I call a dead zone. Basically, subconsciously in your mind, you don't want to go in certain areas because it's a little bit too close to the road, and then the path is cutting into the park, and so it doesn't really create effective space to use it. So what this grass mounding does is create a sense of enclosure without having to be fully enclosed. People can still see in the park, but it just creates a bit of safety and also creates a bit of buffer. You don't want your children running out onto these busy roads here. So that's the grass mound strategy. And also in the grass mounds against the road would be planting natives and trees. This just adds to the sense of enclosure while people can still see through and people can still enjoy the view of the park. So then to add to that enclosure and safety, I've added an open fence. So you can see the blue line around the entire site. That's an open fence, only open path areas. And then the existing playground, I put an enclosed fence around that. And I think it's the Wyndham Play Space strategy, they've suggested to have one enclosed play space per park or something like that. So there you go. Then I've also added some more level crossings all around our roundabout here, and then one at the entrance of Quantin Binnah. So that will help the council's goal of reducing private vehicle trip making by increasing the safety for pedestrians. I know that the council has to work with big roads, so there's a lot of things going on there to also put in lights at that crossing, etc., etc. But we're having a grand vision here, so we may as well be grand. And then we have extra paths around the site, so that just increases accessibility and safety. So now we're looking at what this proposal would look like from the exterior, and the visibility. So what you're seeing, we looked at before, that's the current street frontage. Like I said, it's nothing. And then this would be, with this project, this is what this project would look like on that site. So as you can see, we've got this bronze funnel architecture on the side and at this corner. So it's really talking to the corner. It's much more visible, but it's still not out of place. It's not a big blob of yellow or something. It fits in the context, yet it's talking to you as you're walking, driving, riding by, and it helps punctuate the urban context and improve the urban edges. Thank you, Council, for that one. So here we've got from the urban design framework, activating street frontages with high quality built form, the location of gateway sites and features. So that's also, we're doing that by using our funnel architecture, increasing use of safety, that's the crossings, and accessibility like transport, paths and the fences and the grass mounds, basically all the things, and encouraging active transport, same things we've looked at. So this is an up close view render of that corner, the Thames Boulevard / Heath Road corner. Oh, I'll just go back. So you can see we've got the funnel architecture going on. We've got a much larger entrance, creates a sense of grandeur and importance. We've got the cafe on the corner here, changing sides of the cafe because the cafe at the moment doesn't get much sun. It also increases community engagement and visibility by having it on that main road site and looking out into the park, because who wants to look out into a car park? You want to look out on the park and enjoy the views of the park, don't you? So here we have Thames Boulevard. And that is the new view on Thames Boulevard. So obviously it's right there. It's moved right up to the edge of the street. We've got the street visibility. We've got the funnel architecture going. And now I'm going to talk about some of the exterior design elements. Like we looked at before, creating a strong visual identity for Wyndham and Quantin Binnah. So first we have our suburban brown brick. So here we have here, listed here, and the state government urban design guidelines indicate that you should integrate architecturally and functionally into the surrounding areas. Then we have the metal cladding, which is taken from the water tank at Cockerock, if you remember, and how that ties into the history of Quantin Binnah and the Chafee brothers and irrigation. So we have that pattern used on, these are actually exterior steps here, which go up to the roof, and there's also wheelchair lift access to that area. So you can see the design, the pattern up closer of that cladding. Also, I'll just say that the rusted metal is incorporating that rural element, adding some texture to the exterior. So then we have our bronze metal cladding, and you can see here the new logo. So the form of the funnel is inspired by the logo, so that's incorporating the element of Quantin Binnah. So you can see this square, as I call it, how that form is taken and manipulated into 3D to become the funnel. And then finally, the bronze element orange is incorporating the Quantin Binnah color while also incorporating the city element as well. So that modern metallic feel adds a modern city element. Also, the form is sleek and sharp, adding another city element as well. And then to add to that point, in the urban design framework, we've got punctuate with revelations of features and expressions of identity. So we've got each of the different elements incorporated into the exterior. Also, I'll say, if you remember, we talked about multi-purpose corridor. You can see the double height at the back of our multi-purpose corridor, and then this section at the front is our single height space. And I'll actually go on to the next one. So, last thing that we'll address is our roof design. So we have lots of problems with the roof at the moment. It's leaking and other things. So I've incorporated the existing 155 solar panels on our building, and they've just moved out and condensed into one area, and that's on an extension, so they all fit there nicely. Then we have an extensive green roof system. So there's many benefits to a green roof, which I'll go on into the next slide. Then we also have our decked rooftop garden, which will house our veggie garden, which this extension will build over. So that way this space can become multi-purpose. It can be for events, it can be community activities. Like I said, there's lift access and the exterior stairs. And this is all in line with the council's environmentally sustainable design framework. So on that we have the green roof system little section here, so you can see how that works. So see, these are some of the benefits of the green roof. It increases biodiversity, captures gaseous and different pollutants. It reduces urban heat islands. It prolongs the life of the roof, which we really want at Quantin Binnah, by 60 years, and it protects from UV rays and acid rain. It reduces the heating and cooling requirements. As we talked about, we've got issues with ventilation and smell. It also reduces noise pollution, so that's a big one for Quantin Binnah, because we want to have community spaces where, you know, maybe the elder members of the community can be comfortable and not have to listen to loud kids at the other end of the building, so that improves the noise pollution overall in our building. And that is the end of the presentation, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.